Okay, well, welcome to the Poetry Box Live. All right, well, our final feature tonight is going to be Doreen Stock. And Doreen Stock is the author of Bye Bye Blackbird. Hailing from Fairfax, California, Doreen is a poet, literary translator, and memoir practitioner. A prolific and widely published writer, Doreen's other works include Tango Man, My Name is Why, Three Tales from the Archives of Love, Talking with Marcel, In Place of Me, Selected Poems with an Introduction by Jack Hirschman, and The Politics of Splendor. She is also a founding member of the Marin Poetry Center, and it is my pleasure to welcome Doreen Stock.
Thank you so much. You can't judge a book by its cover, but you can judge a cover. And it's turned out so beautifully that I'd like to thank the pianist, Sophia Drozd, the photographer, Amy Stock Drozd, my friend, the artist, Susan Weissman, whose eye on all of my projects I appreciate, but most of all, the cover designer at Poetry Box, Robert R. Sanders, who not only read every poem to find the final image, but read the one on the dumping of the pianos several times in order to come up with this beautiful design. Thank you all. I dedicate this first reading of Bye Bye Blackbird to the memory of my mother, Annetta Winnick. For Annetta Diamond Winnick, 1918 to 2012. A balanced mind does not weigh incorrectly is what was written on your high school annual of the beautiful, serious young woman who stared out of its pages. Brilliance is what lasts, mother, polished by these years of loving and being loved. And strength. How were you strong enough to do that? I'm always asked. Always, there's in your firm voice, echoing in my heart, calming fears, pointing me in new directions. Those who ask that question have never known you. I decided to open the book with a poem that I wrote many years ago in the 90s. My mother was collecting my mail for me at home, and I was living in Bedouin lands in a small development town called Arad. I got to watch the shepherds, the Bedouin shepherds with their camels and their sheep and their goats on hill after hill out of my window. And so I chose the first poem out of that collection, and it's called Bedouins Can Find Their Mothers. Bedouins can find their mothers. There are signs that only a daughter can read in the smallest portion of the eyes above the blackness, in the position of even 3 rocks on the slope at noon. There's a scent of flowers that were trampled and bent, like the shadow of a spine broken and then reformed, that the Bedouin daughter can read. The next poem came from a dream I had in my mother's last year, preparing me for our separation. I tried to render it in this poem exactly as I experienced it in the dream. It's called Mother Horse. Long ago, when mothers were horses with their big hearts against our small heads, we were calm next to their giant bodies, and nothing was too hard for them to do. They could lift us onto their backs and run into the night sky, never ever leaving behind us behind. Long ago, when we could feel them around us, and they would bend their heads down to drink of still waters, and we were warm and safe. Then came a time like Guernica, and they were terrified and white with anguish, their big blue teeth bared in tragic ways, their necks arched to the breaking point by the cruel harness of pain. And then we were forced to lead separate lives, and we longed for them as they streaked through our dream. They roamed the worlds in search of us, and we could hear them whinnying across the abyss of ice and black water that we would have to cross if we were to ever find them again. My mother lived in Palm Springs, California, and every summer she would avoid the heat with my father, and they would pilgrimage up to Marin County and stay in a local hotel. But one summer, towards the end of her life, she got caught up here with a cascade of illnesses, as happens to older people, and she was here for a whole year. And she was in a convalescent hospital and recovering slightly. And her caregiver said to me, if you could get her home now, her mentality would improve. She would know where she is. So I did it. And the medical transport that we took from Greenbrae Convalescent Hospital to Palm Springs, California, had quite a driver. And the next poem is about the driver of that medical transport. The poem Geronimo is written at 70 miles per hour with the second driver up front. And he, yes, that's really his name, Geronimo, black hair combed smoothly back from his brow, think crow's wing in the wind here, bends over my mother in the ambulance to change her diaper, returning her home from the hospitals of the north to die in the desert, her own bit of heaven, couch by the TV, bed by the white curtained window, rabbits under the yellow lounge chairs, a glimpse of the orange tree laden through patio windows. She can see me reading in the living room under the yellow rain of the lamp in my favorite chair. I can see her reading in her bed by the yellow rain of lamplight. The poem Geronimo is written at 70 miles an hour. He answers, think the essence of upright kindness here. I've got babies. I'm used to diapers, to her questioning look, speeding past almond orchards in full bloom. Is this really happening to me? And this young man with the movie star face is changing my diaper? At 70 miles per hour without losing balance, without bumping his head on the overhanging glass full of life-saving equipment, at 70 without losing humane dignity, rolling his 93-year-old patient back and forth as the job demands. And then 10 minutes later, when the infected bladder squirts, returning with a joke and a smile to do it again. Think angel here, a term I do not use lightly. Asking me, meanwhile, if I'm okay as we speed past the hawk poised on its fence post, listening in the crosswinds of the cars swooping down on the little rustling being under the grass to take her, while the light of love shines out of the eyes of all of us. Geronimo. On the dumping of pianos. This is the poem that Robert said he read several times before he designed the cover. There are two, well, no, not this one. To be honest with you, the guys enjoy it. They try so hard all day not to scratch anything. And all of a sudden, they get to throw it off the truck. Brian Goodwin, Piano Mover, the New York Times, July 30th, 2014. So some of them land with their legs in the air, I'm told. Although I haven't seen it, some let out a whole symphony of wailing, bang, bang, as they're tossed. And some get the axe, their dark cabinets burned up for firewood. There's a huge metal stove, too, that can demolish them. Firebirds of smoke billowing out. I imagine Sviatostruck Richters of heat melting their keys, curling their strings. Thus, I wanted my mother's body watched from the moment they tied the numbered tag around her white ankle that I would never see again. I even signed papers in advance for such a watcher, shomer, as he is called in Hebrew. But when the time came, no one could be found in the entire Coachella Valley. Bang, bang, crash, crash, as chord after chord went off in the darkened hospital room. Crash, bang, crash, my fingers punching number after number on my cell phone as she lay after her last Shema, dressed in the gown of red and pink flannel roses I had stitched by hand and her granddaughter had seamed with a lime green grosgrain ribbon. The funeral home director thanked me for the pretty gown, it being hard to sit in a room with someone else's mother, as he offered to do until I could return and relieve him. Bang, crash, the room so silent. Crash, 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 the baby grands, the uprights, music stilled in them forever. The shomer coming at last down Highway 10 from LA with a pocket full of songs to relieve me late the next afternoon. My last sight of her in light-filled room, my last kiss over flannel and roses, not willing, not able ever to imagine that kind of ruin for someone so upright, so grand. This is the title poem. It's called Bye Bye Blackbird. In the last days, you seemed younger, flamboyant, dashing around the halls in your wheelchair at the desert hospital, wearing that cherry blossom print kimono I found for you with your favorite caregiver, a young Filipino nurse who, after you were deeply attached to him, left suddenly for a better job. Bye bye, Blackbird, he sang out, lips dark pink, eyes all blue. Pack up all my cares and woes. Here I go, swinging low. As you went inward, days, nights. So make my bed and light the light. I'll arrive late tonight. I couldn't see in, but I could hear you. And all through the desert night on your last ride, you continued, passing cactus, passing sage, your last instructions clear in my ear. You're the one to be sure I look right in the carriage, honey. All the way down Ramon Road, past Date Palm Drive into Cathedral City where the cemetery lives. Stoplights, go lights, with a wave of your white gloved hand, a Lisa Minnelli smile, black cane tucked under your armpit. I said, Blackbird, oh Blackbird, bye-bye. You'll pardon me. So the last poem I'll read is about a piano competition. And it's called Claire de Lune. She's the last to play in a field of 10, 3 judges tabled before the baby grand piano, and past the immediate curtain of pure tension, hanging ivy is moving against the wall of windows, through which can be seen far off a man, calmly seated on a stone ledge, his back to us, and facing an expanse of the light-soaked San Francisco Bay. She executes a crisp bow in a black suit and floral tie, cuffs rolled back over jacket sleeves, presenting her small hands to the gleaming keys. A moment of silence to connect with the spirit of the composer, a sharp intake of breath, a whispered bow, and Claude Debussy fills the room, presses against the church windows, the rustling leaves fluttering against them, beyond the wide water trembling. My mother, who's been gone 5 years now, soars into the room in cream flannel, coral roses on wings of a moonlit sadness, the music now pouring out of the black instrument at the touch of her great-granddaughter's hands. The man begins to levitate slightly off the wall of stone, the water before him crashing in green waves against an invisible shore. There's perfume in the air, a faraway look as the sapphire eyes of the piano player search the invisible shore, the gleaming shore, threshold, majesty, a small golden crown settling into her short blonde hair, as great-grandmother circles above her in the moonlight, cream flannel, coral roses, and slowly vanishes. The man is high over the water now. He lifts one hand, palm open, toward the glittering, light-soaked bay above which a blue moon is slowly risen. Ah, his favorite perfume, and we can smell it. I'd like to thank all of you for coming this afternoon, and a special thanks to Shawn and Robert for producing this beautiful book. Thank you so much.
Oh, Doreen, that was stunning. The relationship between mother and daughter is such a sacred one. And these poems of yours detailing so many different aspects of that relationship in her last days. It's so human, it's so real, it's so full of heart, it's so full of love. I'm touched by it every time I read it. Now hearing you read them, it's that much more impacting, and I'm gonna have to call my mom tomorrow. So thank you for this. It was really beautiful.
It was my pleasure.